Hello, everyone. It's wonderful to speak with you again today. My topic, my presentation, is the Tao of Karma, easily misunderstood. And I'll do my best to tackle a somewhat difficult subject because it doesn't translate well in many ways into Western culture, but I'll give it my best shot. So I want to start with the definition I just pulled out of a dictionary. Destiny or fate, following as effect from cause. In other words, the laws of cause and effect. I think that's a good working definition, but I think a real understanding of it can be quite a bit deeper. So I want to start with what karma isn't, because I think there's a lot of misconceptions about it. So, it's not, hey, you had it coming, pal, or, what goes around comes around. These are ideas that you hear a lot. It's not divine decree or divine justice. In short, it's not the universe's way of exacting out revenge for bad deeds committed. Now, I say all these things about what it's not, but if you think about it, this really is the perception you tend to encounter a lot in Western culture. All of us at some point are going to get hurt, either by something someone does or something someone says, and it's very tempting to sort of fall back into the, what they're going to get theirs. Karma will work its magic and weave its way through things, and they'll be punished for whatever they do. And I think that's probably not the right attitude to have. And also what you often see is people, see things as divine decree. And I have some real problems with that, and I'll kind of try to explain why I have a problem with that as this presentation goes on, hopefully. Okay, so as I said, the concept of karma is just not well understood in the West. I think a lot of that is the Judeo-Christian influences kind of incorrectly shape the Western conception of karma. The limitations of language also contribute to the misunderstanding as well. It's definitely, the origin of karma is an Eastern idea, and I don't think it exactly translates well. I mean, karma is kind of the word we have, but it's sort of tough to get the meaning exactly. And thinking karma is external and that there's a deity that determines fate, I think is just wrong. One of the problems I have with this is that, it's sort of, if you embrace that sort of idea, it's very easy to put aside compassion and understanding. And if you look at, say, the problems of the world, which are legion, but just to take a specific one, take like world hunger and the parts of the world where people are literally starving, they don't have access to clean water or to sufficient amounts of food, it's very easy to say, oh, well, it's their karma from a past life, it's just the universe meeting out and balancing things. And to look at it that way, I think, takes away the idea of compassion, and it substitutes the sort of idea of the universe or God is distributing justice evenly, and I just don't buy that personally. Now, so whenever I think of the misconception of karma, or when I hear people sort of say things like, hey, what goes around comes around, or boy, that guy, he's going to get his karma, you just wait and see, I think of a country music song, and I didn't always like country music, but a friend of mine that I work with sort of introduced me to it, and I've sort of learned to appreciate it. But whenever I think of karma being misunderstood, I always think of this song, so I wanted to share it with you and share the lyrics with you just briefly. The song is called Pray For You by Jaron and the Long Road to Love, and here's how it goes. I haven't been to church since I don't remember when. Things were going great till they fell apart again. So I listened to the preacher as he told me what to do. He said you can't go hating others who have done wrong to you. Sometimes we get angry, but we must not condemn. Let the good Lord do his job, and you must just pray for them. I pray your brakes go out running down a hill. I pray a flower pot falls from a windowsill and knocks you in the head, like I'd like to do. I pray your birthday comes and nobody calls. I pray you're flying high when your engine stalls. I pray all your dreams never come true. Just know wherever you are, honey, I pray for you. I'm really glad I found my way to church because I'm already feeling better and I thank God for the words. Yeah, I'm going to take the high road and do what the preacher told me to do. You just keep messing up and I'll just keep praying for you. I pray your tire blows out at 110. I pray you pass out drunk with your friend and wake up with his and her tattoos. Just know wherever you are, near or far, in your house or in your car, wherever you are, honey, I pray for you. I pray for you. So this song, of course, cracks me up. It's very funny, especially when you hear it sung, because he, makes all the funny points and along with the verse or the music. But it reminds me of the incorrect perception of karma that I think prevails a lot of times People tend to reference it when they've been hurt, either by something someone's done to them or something someone said. So remembering that song triggers sort of the ideas to me of what the opposite the opposite definition of karma is, and it helps me keep it in focus. When I personally feel attacked by something someone does or say to me, I try not to let that Western view of karma prevail. So that's all well and fine about talking about what karma isn't, but so what is karma? How can we talk about it in a positive sense? So ultimately what I'd say is, well, karma is a cycle. It happens because of a certain perception, thought, or action that takes root. And this perception, thought, or action can be good or bad, negative or positive, so to speak. Once it takes root, it creates a cycle of circumstances and effect, so of cause and effect. And it can tend to be kind of habitual. If you tend to be a positive person who looks at the good areas of your life and that's what you focus on, what you find is that what you put out will be positive, and over time, not necessarily immediately, sometimes it is though, that positivity works its way back to you. And similarly, if you're a person who's sort of mired in ignorance and you put out a lot of negativity, and I spent years being this way, so I speak to this with some experience, that what you put out is sort of what you get. Now you might say, well, isn't that kind of like what goes around comes around? Because, well, not exactly. It really isn't. It's far more subtle than that. And it's important to remember that the key to the whole idea of understanding karma is that you are actually the source. We are actually the source of our own karma, possibly over lifetimes. So karma is what happens to you as a result of a continuous cycle. That continuous cycle is made up, like I said, of attitudes, actions, thoughts, and perceptions, and they can tend to become habitual. So you have to sort of do your best to use your mind to guide your attitudes and your thoughts, and even your perceptions if you can, at least to question your perceptions. And hopefully that transforms into good actions or positive actions. So karma is a habitual way of behaving that creates a self-perpetuating cycle, as I sort of, hopefully I gave good examples of that above. So karma is the sum total of everything you think, say, and do, possibly over lifetimes. So your karma, you are the source of your own karma. So I want to throw in a quote from the Dalai Lama here, because I think it hits the point of karma really well. When you think everything is someone else's fault, you will suffer a lot. When you realize that everything springs only from yourself, you will learn both peace and joy. I think that's true. When you realize that you're the source of your life, you set it up, it allows you to change your attitudes, your thoughts, your perceptions, and your actions in a good way. Okay, so now I want to talk a little bit about the karmic laws of giving and receiving. And to do this, I want to use a story, one of the stories in Derek's wonderful book, The Tao of Daily Life. And it's called The Water Pump. And there's a picture of what a water pump that's going to manifest here in the story in a moment here. I'm just going to briefly retell it. So as the story goes, a person is walking through a desert, and he runs out, his canteen runs out of water, and he's gone 2 days without water, and he's near death if he doesn't get water soon. And he sees the shack, and he thinks it might be a mirage, but lo and behold, it turns out to be a real shack. And he goes inside hoping to find water, and in that moment he walks in and he sees a water pump, and it's attached to the ground with a pipe going down into the ground. And he thinks, maybe this is it, maybe I'll be saved here. So he vigorously starts to work the pump, and he goes at it hard and fast, and he gets very tired. He's near exhausted, and nothing's happening. The water's not coming out, and he's just spent. And he looks off to the corner, and he sees that there's a bottle of water with a cork on it to prevent the water from evaporating. And he goes to grab it, and there's a note attached, and it says, if you pour this water in the pump and work the pump, you'll have more water. You'll get all the water you need. And just make sure that after you get what you needed, that you fill this water bottle back up, cork it, and put it back where you found it. And so in this moment, he's left with this choice. One, he can either drink this water, as he's literally dying of thirst here, or he can take a chance, take a leap of faith, and pour the water into the pump and hope that it'll prime the pump and produce the water that he needs to live. So it is a crossroads, a moment that he has to choose. And of course, in the story, he chooses to pour the water down the pump, and he begins working the pump, and he after a short time, he hears the gurgling, and sure enough, the water comes up, and he's able to drink his fill of what he needs. He's able to refill his canteen. And after he does this, he finds a note or a piece of paper and a pencil in the shack, and it has sort of a map of the region, and he knows he has a way to go, but now thanks to this thing that he's found, he's able to sustain his journey and go on. And so he fills up the water again, and he corks it, and he takes the pencil, and he writes at the end of the note about explaining what to do with the water, believe me, it works. And that's the story that I think illustrates the ideas of karma so well, the karmic mechanism so well. It is a leap of faith to put out positivity and good actions, which is, to get the good things in life, which I guess is represented really by the water. But yeah, that does take a leap of faith. And you can't go through life thinking of karma as like a balance sheet, like, hey, I'll do this good deed and then I'll get this, and I have to be careful not to do this because I don't want this bad thing to happen to me. It's so much more profound than that. The idea is to give selflessly without expectation of return in the same way that the Tao does. I mean, the Tao gives us everything we have. It gives us life. It gives us all the things we see. But it does so without expectation of anything. And I think when you're able to do that, when you're able to give selflessly without expecting anything, then the benefits, I think, just naturally come. And so I'm going to go ahead and try to sum it up a bit here now. It's important to be aware of the misconceptions about karma that prevail in Western societies. Remember that it's not a divine decree or punishment and rewards handed out by the universe. Understand that Judeo-Christian culture and the limitations of language do contribute to the misunderstanding, and be aware of the misunderstanding so that you can recognize it when it often comes up, either within yourself or if you see it in others. It can be an example of how not to think of it. Realize that we are all the source of our own karma. That's true. Like the Dalai Lama quote, it springs from your situation, springs from yourself. And once you realize that, peace and joy does become easier to obtain. Know that our attitudes, actions, thoughts, and perceptions create our karma. Embrace the cyclical nature of karma, and don't allow yourself to get discouraged when things don't always seem to be going your way. Instead, approach the idea of karma with compassion and positivity for both yourself and others. When you see bad things happen to people, don't think, well, it's just karma, they deserve it. It's better to have compassion and to give selflessly if you can, if you're in a position to help them. Focus on having positive attitudes, thoughts, perceptions, and actions without keeping a balance sheet. Don't keep I'll do this good thing and hopefully get this good thing and try to stay away from these bad things so that the bad things don't happen to me. That shouldn't be the motivation. The wealth of or the expression of your positive actions and attitudes should be done without any expectation of return. And taking positive actions and having a positive mindset to invoke the karma mechanism is a leap of faith. There's no guarantee. I can't prove to you that if you do the right things, you'll get the right things. I mean, you look out in the world, a lot of people say, why does it seem like the evil will prosper? I mean, I'd really like to know. And I can understand why people feel that way. Sometimes it really does feel that way. Like, people who seem selfish seem to get more, and other people, the saying sort of nice guys finish last. I mean, sometimes it's hard not to feel that way when you look at events in the world. But when we do this, when you are able to give without expectation of return, benefits often come to us seemingly out of nowhere, from the least expected places. And I think that really does happen. So I want to just end my presentation with a wonderful quote from Joseph Campbell. Whatever your fate is, whatever the hell happens, you say, this is what I need. It may look like a wreck, but go at it as if it were an opportunity, a challenge. If you bring love to that moment, not discouragement, you will find the strength there. Okay, so there it was, the Tao of Karma, easily misunderstood. Thank you so much for letting me speak with you this morning, or today. I hope I said something that was of use, and I hope you all have a wonderful Sunday and a wonderful week.
Alex, thank you. I think that's a very skillful presentation of the subtleties in the concept of karma. I think many people will look at karma and feel like, yeah, I know what that is. Because we talk about karma in our daily life, but I think a lot of times we're not aware that we're using the term incorrectly, or more from a Western perspective, Western thinking, which I find to be more like an eye for an eye, the idea. Um, and I had to chuckle a little bit when you mentioned the things that people usually say to describe karma, like, you had it coming, pal. That just seems so funny to me because, when you say, yeah, hey, you had it coming, that seems kind of harsh. So we always try to soften it a little bit by saying, by adding pal at the end, as if that makes it any easier for someone's misfortune that they're currently suffering. And I find that a lot of people oftentimes will look at someone, maybe someone who's being uh, unreasonable, maybe being a bit of a jerk. Uh, and the one thing that I hear so frequently is just you wait and see. Just wait, you know. And the idea is that karma is going to catch up to you. Karma will get caught up to you, and therefore you're going to get your just desserts, etc. And recently, in this election season, I find that there's a new term that's being used quite a bit. The term is Schadenfreude. This is so if you look at news coverage, sometimes you will see people use that term, Schadenfreude. Not frequently, only because it's a pretty long word and people forget, how to spell it, etc. It comes from German. If you were to come across this term again, Schadenfreude, let me explain. It means taking pleasure in somebody else's misfortune. Schadenfreude. So when you see, for instance, a political figure suffering a severe setback, and yet you see that, this setback was entirely due to something that he had done in the past, then there are people that are reveling in, his misfortune, and there you go. That's Schadenfreude. So karma, from the Western perspective, seems to have that element baked into it, sort of like people passing on the freeway, seeing someone with with car problems or maybe even an accident. We can't stop. We can't resist we can't resist from wanting to take another look at it because of that element, that Schadenfreude, that we want to take pleasure in someone else's misery and misfortune. The Eastern concept can be much more subtle. It's about our connections with one another. It's about how we affect one another. When I study the Eastern concepts and explore the subtleties, I actually find things that are kind of surprising. So, as an example, we probably have all seen charity organizations where you can pick and choose a child in a third world country and sponsor that child by sending a little bit of money, and then that child will, write to you and kind of let you know how he or she is doing, etc. So, so my wife and I thought about doing this for some time, but then we heard a talk from an Eastern master about karma, and we thought twice. So basically, the idea is that it's about connections. So indeed, if you do something good, then that person, may feel compelled to return the kindness. So it's actually not a great idea to be picking and choosing who the target is of your charitable work. And at this point, I was like, "What? Wait, I don't understand. This is not making sense to me." So the master further explains that if you think about how when you are giving, you're doing so in a very overt way, identifying yourself as the benefactor, as the person who's basically laying an obligation on someone else to repay your kindness later on. So think about the possibility, the master says, that your lifetime is done and you can rest. However, this other soul that you have benefited now has a karmic obligation to specifically pay you back, and therefore you now have no choice but to manifest again in reality in order to be the recipient of the returning kindness due to the karmic mechanism. So, and further, the master explains that this is why it's important that whenever possible that you do a good deed or charitable deed, that if you can make sure that it is anonymous, that you don't need a highlight. That is, if you look at the spectrum of all possible good deeds, the least skillful way to do something good is to use that as a way to give yourself a very high profile, to grab the spotlight and basically say to the world, look what a charitable person I am, look how kind I am, look what a philanthropist I am, world class, look at this check that I'm making out to this organization, look at me. Well, that's a manifestation of ego. And the other end of the spectrum is someone who's doing a lot of good and yet remaining completely unknown. That is the most skillful way to go. So that had a big impact on me, frankly. So when I looked at the charitable work again of identifying a child specifically, it made all kinds of sense. These children, as a bunch of photographs to be chosen. Of course, people gravitate to the ones that look cute, that appeal to them in some way. So that creates separation. That creates distinctions. Oh, what about the child that is not as well favored by the gods, and therefore, not as adorable? You don't know that this is maybe the child in need. So having to pick and choose, for me, is not a good idea. I contribute charitably anyway, but I will do so in a way as to not force my hand to pick a specific recipient of the charity. And, whenever possible, remain anonymous. So, wow, a lot of subtle aspects to karma that I had not considered before. And so, Alex, just relaying a couple of messages back to you from Julie. Thank you, Alex. I'll try to reflect on everything today. Indeed, and I want to say that, like the water pump, I have done some research on this. It is quite true that there are certain designs of water pumps where you have to start things off with a certain amount of water, or it just won't work. It's got nothing to work with. People who are unfamiliar with that kind of water pump, you can perhaps think of a different analogy, like a car where the battery has died. You need to get going, but you need to get it going by jumping the car. You got to pull out, you got to bring out the jumper cables, you got to hook it up. Somebody else has to help you. They give you that initial jolt of electricity, like startup capital for a small business. Then you can get going. You can get going and keep going. So that's the way it is with karma and the karmic mechanism as well. Like the pumping mechanism, it has to have something to get it going. So I would urge you that if you don't see a whole lot of Tao manifesting in your life, a great way to go, a great way to get things going is to jumpstart your own karmic mechanism.